As I've said before, a vast majority of Rimuru's power comes from his skills. Everything that makes him as strong as he is, as well as strong as he's going to be, all comes from this ever-growing collection of abilities. So, if we're gonna understand exactly how strong Rimuru is, we're gonna have to go through every skill he's picked up along the way. There's no point skipping to where he is right now in the anime because a lot of what happens early on serves as the foundation for the power he gains later. It helps us to make sense out of the evolution of certain skills. If that's a topic that you're not familiar with, then I highly recommend watching the latest video on how skills work first. I'm gonna be talking in a way that assumes you've already seen that plus the part 1 that came out before it. So be sure to check those out before watching this one. Now, before we get started, now let's get back to the video. Starting with his reincarnation, Rimuru was born with several intrinsic skills in the form of resistances. At first, these were the temperature-based tolerance ones of resist heat and resist cold. But these were almost immediately combined together to create the evolved skill resist temperature. What this does is it basically grants the ability to withstand extremely high or low temperatures, effectively nullifying any damage that could possibly be taken via ice or flame type attacks. Next we have resist piercing weapon and resist melee attack. These are resistances that work to mitigate the damage received by any sort of physical attack. In the odd case that Rimuru does somehow take a little bit of damage though, his cancel pain resistance would prevent him from even feeling it. That doesn't mean he hasn't taken any damage, but it does mean that the sensation of pain has been completely removed. So, given that he can't feel when he's been hurt, the way he determines how much damage he's sustained is of course with the help of his Great Sage skill. This will automatically determine the percentage of damage in which his body is taken, then follow it up with the best course of action needed in order to heal it. Usually that course of action would be the process of predating, analyzing, then repairing any damaged part of the body. It's a combination of the unique skill Predator and the intrinsic slime skill Self-Regeneration, both of which we already covered in part 1. So, after that, the only other resistance he gained was one towards electricity. The rest of the reincarnation process involved the development of his extremely overpowered unique skills. The two main aspects that we now know serve to make him as powerful as he is and as powerful as he's going to be. But since we're already familiar with those, let's move on to the skills and protections he gained from his encounter with Veldora. It was from this single chance meeting that Rimuru was able to learn what's probably one of his most underrated abilities. A rather basic extra skill that goes by the name of Magic Sense. Although acquiring it isn't entirely difficult, making the most out of what it does most definitely is. You see, Magic Sense allows the user to perceive the particles of magic floating around them. Then, by observing how these particles are affected by the waves of light and sound passing through them, the user can take that information and calculate how the area around them looks and sounds. They're basically using the distortions in the magic particles around them to produce visible images and audible sounds. Now, normally that level of information would be beyond what any human could possibly comprehend. But by allocating the management of all that data over to Great Sage, the only thing Rimuru needs to be concerned with after is the output. A complete 360-degree view of his surroundings, along with all the perceivable sounds from a range of over a few hundred meters. It's a skill that basically makes it impossible for Rimuru to ever get ambushed, unless there was some sort of phenomenon that didn't actually interfere with the magic particles in the environment. The complete and total awareness that Magic Sense grants makes pretty much everything perceivable all the time. That's why I think it's one of the more underrated skills in Rimuru's arsenal. Next, we have the divine protection known as the Crest of the Storm. Although it's one of the more vague fundamental properties of the world, it does bear some similarities to titles and names. I mean, the protection itself was something Rimuru received the instant he became a Tempest, but the exact specifics as to what it provides for him isn't something that we're fully aware of yet. What we do know is that the Crest of the Storm resulted in a modification to Rimuru's elemental alignment. It shifted whatever it was before to the element of Storm, a kind of specialized area unique to the Tempest name that forcibly adjusts any elemental skills or magic towards the side of the Storm element. It's actually the reason why the basic flame or lightning skills he inherited from others were evolved into the Storm versions we see in the anime. Continuing with Rimuru's traversal through the cave, there were quite a few additional common and extra skills he acquired before leaving. Most were from the whole slew of monsters he absorbed along the way, but there was also the water manipulation one that he developed all on his own. This was a combination of hydraulic propulsion, current movement, and water blade. essentially giving Rimuru complete control over the element of water. As for the others, the Tempest Serpent gave him Poisonous Breath and Sense Heat Source. Poisonous Breath being a powerful corrosive area of effect attack, and Sense Heat Source allowing for the detection of any heat-emitting objects in the vicinity. In a similar vein, the Centipede creature gave Rimuru Paralyzing Breath, a less damaging but just as effective ability as Poisonous Breath. Then the Big Spider gave 2 different variants of threads that could be emitted from the body. Sticky Thread for entrapping enemies, and Steel Thread to bolster one's defenses. Moving on to the Bat, this possessed the intrinsic skills of Ultrasonic Wave and Drain. But because Drain was determined to be an inferior version of Predator, Rimuru decided to ignore it instead of add it to his arsenal. Ultrasonic Wave, on the other hand, was actually quite useful for a number of things. Initially, it was only intended to be used for echolocation, but it was after a bit of experimentation that Rimuru figured out how to use it as his voice. He began to use the skill's supersonic waves as a means to project sound, an idea that came when he realized that the waves could also be used to render enemies unconscious. So all it took was a little manipulation, and suddenly Rimuru possessed the ability to speak. Now, the last skill gained while in the cave was the lizard's body armor. It wasn't really anything special compared to all the other resistances he was born with, but the hardening it did to his outer body did add that extra layer of reinforcement. Now, after Rimuru had left the cave, the next set of skills he received was from the absorption of a Direwolf. It was a trio of highly useful utility skills that go by the names of Coercion, Keen Smell, and Thought Communication, most of which do pretty much what you'd expect them to. Coercion is a form of intimidation that scales with the strength of the user. The more powerful the user is, then the less likely it is that the target will be able to resist the skill's effects, kind of like a more tame version of Ainz's Despair aura. Keen Smell is really just a highly enhanced version of the sense of smell. Then Thought Communication refers to a more advanced version of telepathy. What I mean is that, rather than telepathically linking with only a single target, Thought Communication enables this link to occur across multiple people. It creates this space in which the user can freely share whatever picture is in their mind with whoever else is in that space, allowing for a large group to work as a collective much more easily and over a much larger area. Now, the other 2 skills gained from the Direwolf are Dark Lightning and Shadow Step. Shadow Step comes from the storm evolution of the Direwolf known as the Starwolf, and it's the ability to use the shadows as a means to hide or quickly travel somewhere. Dark Lightning, on the other hand, is a very powerful extra skill gained after a Starwolf has evolved into a Tempest Starwolf. The basic version allows for some form of control over the range and power in which the attack is capable of, usually by adjusting the level of magicals applied to it. But with the combination of a certain new skill later on, Rimuru can freely manipulate the lightning any which way he wants. It's a very destructive ability with a power grade that's said to be higher than the A rank. So that means at the very least it has enough firepower to destroy a small village, which makes sense considering it's one of the skills that's said to have originally belonged to Veldora. Moving on, the next set of abilities comes from the whole encounter with Shizu and Ifrit. But before those 2 were absorbed into his body, Rimuru first gained the elemental magic known as Icicle Lance, a basic projectile type attack that fires one or many icicles in a targeted direction. It was immediately after this that Rimuru used a combination of sticky and steel thread to create a sturdier compound, one that was not only strong enough to keep Ifrit restrained, but also durable enough to withstand his flames. This would later become a new skill that Rimuru would refer to as Sticky Steel Thread. Now, once Ifrit had been consumed by Predator, what came with him were the skills Replication, Combustion, and Ranged Barrier, another trio of skills that would serve as the basis for quite a few more powerful ones in the future. Replication was the ability to create clones of oneself, identical copies of the user that can be freely controlled via simple commands from within a 1 kilometer radius. The interesting thing about these clones though is that they also possess every skill that the original possesses. The only exception is that they can't use unique or ultimate skills. Everything else is available to use at a level of power proportional to the amount of magicals used to create them. So this may seem like the clones are practically perfect copies of the original, but they also bear the downside of possessing almost 0 stamina, making it so that casting magic isn't something they're entirely capable of. Now, unlike how Ifrit or Soei can make multiple clones, Rimuru can only make 1. The difference between his and the others though is that there's no limit to the amount of power it can have. Ifrit and Soei's clones are often very fragile, but Rimuru's clone can almost reach the same power as the original so long as enough magicals are given to it. That's what makes Replication such a useful ability. As for the other two skills, those aren't really worth talking about without first knowing about the unique skill that Rimuru inherited from Shizu. Reason being that those and a lot of the other skills from this point on are combined together to make completely new ones. I'm not going to cover what those are today due to the increased complexity behind what they're capable of, but we should go over the key factor and how they came to be. That way we can jump straight into the new evolved skills in the beginning of the next video. So, what is this simple yet powerful unique skill known as Degenerate? Well, unlike Great Sage or Predator, Degenerate only consists of two subskills. There's Synthesis, which allows for the combining of multiple targets into a single object, then Separation, which releases the inherent properties of a single target into separate objects. These were the key components behind Shizue's transformation. They allowed her human form and Ifrit's spirit form to coexist without the side effect of turning herself into a Majin. That, however, just barely scratches the surface of what this skill is capable of. When in the hands of Rimuru, Degenerate becomes much more powerful, specifically with regards to the synthesis effect. I mean, the ability to mix and match any number of targets makes for situations where the possibilities are endless, especially when you have a supercomputer like Great Sage supervising the entire process. So, what Rimuru now possesses is the extremely useful ability to merge skills in a way that often evolves them and makes them better. It's not the entirety of what Degenerate is capable of, but it is one of the most common ways we've seen it be used. As for Separation, well, the applications of it may not be as useful as Synthesis, but it is still a very worthwhile asset to have. Like, you can use it to extract skills that aren't etched into the soul of a person, or it can be used to remove poisons, toxins, and negative status effects from a person's body. So long as the targets being separated have their own inherent properties, then Separation can be used to split them apart. That's pretty much the basics of Degenerate. And it's with this that Rimuru was able to begin optimizing his entire collection of abilities. So that's what we'll start off with once we get to the next video. Until then though, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!
Creator is sorry for neglecting YouTube for a month and is also sorry that this video is really boring than what you saw in the thumbnail. So to make it up for this trashy video, Creator will maximize the next video's quality. And also don't mind leaving a suggestion in the comments. The Creator will be reading everything in the comments daily. As always, have a nice day, keep smiling, keep healthy, don't die. Thank you very much for watching.